Welcome to another installment of Chocolate Chat. My name is Chocolate Yoddah, spelled Yoddah, because film studios are litigious. And with me today is Coach Kisha Woods, also known as Coach K Woods. So I saw you online. I caught a few of your videos. The reason that I wanted to talk to you is that your content, in my opinion, is unusual, right? In that now, and I'm going to go on a long exposition before you even introduce yourself. But when men are sitting around talking about women, one of the most consistent complaints is like, why can't she ever take responsibility? Why can't she ever admit that she's wrong? You know, and I see that a few of your videos, that's the theme. It's all about taking personal responsibility. So now, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we'll get
Yes,
into it.
yes. My name again. Thank you so much for having me here. I am Kisha with Upgraded Mindsets is my coaching and consulting business. I am a mindset empowerment as well as entrepreneurial planning coach for women. I pretty much help us get out of our self-limited beliefs that have us stuck thinking that we're all supposed to live the system standard life. I totally believe in living according to our own values, being unapologetic and being confident in our day to day life. And doing that requires us to take accountability for our own lives. And I used to be a woman who deflected a lot of things, put everybody's needs ahead of my own, and would deflect on it. But now I am someone who takes full responsibility and accountability. And I want to help other women do the same because with doing that, you get peace, you get clarity, and you're able to make logic decisions to really help us move forward in our lives. So I'm super excited to, bring that to my platform.
Excellent, excellent. So there's a couple of things that stood out for me. Number one, I'd like to hear what brought you to the conclusions that you've reached in terms of, you know, taking responsibility and
Got you.
accountability, and also you said something about not living the systemic life or the system
Hmm.
life. That's something that I talk about a lot. I think we're on the same page on that. So I'd love for you to talk more
Sure.
about that. But let's start with the genesis, the origin story. How did you get to the point where you said, "Hey, I have to. If my life is going to improve, I have to take responsibility."
Honestly, the beginning of COVID kind of was a breaking point for me. I was a people pleaser. I used to live the with the mindset of if I did everything else for others, I would get my blessings that way. And unfortunately, living that way really caused me to forget about me. And therefore, when it was time to do for me, I was completely empty. And that built a lot of frustration up with me. I would do for others, but I would be so upset about doing for others. And the
Interesting.
beginning of COVID kind of was a breaking point because we were just so uncertain about so many things. We really didn't know what was going on. So it was like, oh, okay, now there's another level of uncertainty and a level that I actually don't think I can handle. I actually was coming into kind of a mental breakdown, so to speak, just kind of cracking at the seams. I say that we hold things in for so long, eventually you'll crack. And I was at that point.
Yeah.
So I took a detox from social media in April of 2020 at the heighten when we knew nothing about what was going on. I had to step back from everything. And I began journaling my transformation. And the 30 days of transformation is actually something that will be published later on this year. But it was my breaking point and it was my whole new journey. And it's just gone from there. So, in the midst of me creating my new life and new reality, upgraded mindsets was created during that time. And it's just kind of been um, a journey with that as well.
Yeah.
I really had to put in the work to unlearn situations, learn things how I wanted them to be. I never was a person that didn't speak her mind, but I spoke from a place of anger before. I spoke from a place of frustration. And now I speak from a place of clarity, a space of knowledge. And it just really is a fulfilling thing to be able to give back, tools for other women like me who have been mentally frustrated for years, who have suppressed a lot of emotions to just keep living day to day. It's really fulfilling for me to be able to give back, some tips and tools to make life a little easier for some women. So,
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I am in a way sort of a natural born coach in that when I was 12 years old, other 12-year-olds were coming to
right.
me for advice for some reason, and I never really understood
Mhm.
it, but it was just how it
Yep.
was. And I have a natural inclination to that. And so for me, there's really nothing more fulfilling that I can do as a human being than to contribute positively to somebody's
Absolutely.
life, and it's and I'd love to make money at coaching one day, but if I never do, that'll be okay, because it really is my life's purpose. So I relate to what you're saying. And you mentioned uncertainty. When you go through the six human needs, the first one is certainty, and interestingly enough, the second one is
Mhm.
uncertainty. And however, when it comes to uncertainty, too much of it is a
Yeah.
problem, right? And when COVID hit, we saw people just lose
Yes.
their minds, punching old ladies in the face for toilet paper for reasons that nobody can
Exactly.
explain. you know, you're home. If you run out of toilet paper, it's not going to
Thank
be a
you.
problem,
That part.
but yeah, but I mean, it's interesting where I think it was Lincoln or someone said something about judging a person in
Mhm.
adversity, right? Like that's where you get to know the real
Absolutely.
person. Martin Luther King might have said something like that too. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Martin Luther King Jr. And I believe that. I believe that on the micro level and on the
Yes.
macro level. Like I think when we look at what some individuals did during COVID, it's one thing, but then when we look at the whole society, we failed the test.
Big time.
We didn't
Big
do
time.
we didn't do a good job of rowing in the same direction and trying to get this done. And we're still dealing with it, and it looks like we're going to have another surge this summer. But recorded spring 2022. That's a whole nother
Yes.
discussion. But you had mentioned the second part of my question was regarding living the prescribed
Mhm.
life, the systemic life. I'm very interested in this idea. So tell me what your orientation to that idea
So
is.
I have pretty much adapted the mindset of an unapologetic all around. I am living my truth wholly and completely, and that involves sacrificing whatever is not for me. Even things that I have probably had in my life for years, I have become open minded enough to be able to cut it off if it's not for me. I feel like a lot of us, women especially, we go off of somebody else's values. And when we do that, the struggle comes in, and that's when we get frustrated because we're not living our own life. We are living according to what we see on social media. We are living according to what a song is saying, and that to me is system standard. Why do I want to live how everybody else is living when I try to do it, it's a struggle for me. I'm clearly frustrated when that is how I'm supposed to be doing it. But when I really dug into myself and gathered my own values and aligned myself to follow my values, then I got the peace and the clarity that I needed. And the way that I talk, the way that I speak, is not system standard. I am completely unapologetic in my words. I don't sugarcoat. And I feel like a lot of society wants us to sugarcoat, coddle, and baby, and I'm just not that coach. So when I say, I'm not system standard, I'm not the one that's going to stroke your ego and make you feel good because that's what you need at that time. I'm going to hold you accountable 120% of the time. Whether it hurts at that particular moment or not, I'm going to help you apply the logic to the situation instead of thinking with your emotions, which is what has you stuck in the first place. So when I say, non-system standard, I'm not living according to anyone else's means. I'm living according to my own. And I don't see that a lot as much
Right.
anymore.
Right. I believe the way Shakespeare said it through the play Hamlet was, "To thine own self be true." Right. And I find it interesting. Excuse me while I get a hair out. An errant hair just went in my mouth. I find it interesting where when people reference society for their behavior, it's the norm. It's what people
Hmm.
do. It's what's expected. And I happen to agree with everything you said. I think I approach it from a slightly different perspective in that, yes, I want to be true to myself. And my main reason for that is when I look at society, as I alluded to earlier, in terms of the behavior during COVID, I see a dysfunctional
Yes.
society. So why would I want to pattern my behavior after a dysfunctional
That
society?
part. And people don't get
you
that
know?
part. Like, why are you reverting to what you clearly know is causing havoc in our communities and
Yeah,
causing havoc in your own life? Why are you still defaulting to that every single day?
yeah. And I see that as a certain level of
Oh, yeah.
laziness, because it's easy to go by the established template, right? Like parenting is a good example of that, where most people just do what their parents did,
Hmm.
right? But now in my case, I was dissatisfied with that idea, so I had to come up with something on my own. Now that was harder. It was much
Yeah.
harder because I was flying without a net. I didn't have a template to go by, at least a template that was acceptable to me. So I had to say, okay, how do I do this? And what I figured out basically was, well, what would I have wanted when I was this age? Like as my son got older, every time I had to deal with something, it was all right. What disappointment did I feel at this age, and what did I want someone to do for
Right.
me? And that was the way I figured it out. And that model holds true to this day in terms of my own orientation to
Yeah.
life, because I do want to be true to myself. Now, of course, there's exceptions to that. If you're a serial killer, please don't be true to yourself. Right? However, if you're just a general average person who just wants to get through life, then I see a lot of value in getting very, very clear on what's true for you and then exercising that no matter what the challenges are. And again, as long as you're not harming anybody else to satisfy your needs, then it's all
Yeah.
good. My whole life, I've never understood anyone that cares what anybody else is doing in terms
That
of
part.
like, why are you asking me what I'm ordering at the restaurant? You're not eating it. I am. You know what I
Right.
mean? Why do you care who turns me on
Yeah.
sexually? In my case, it happens to be women, but if it was
What
men,
difference?
what difference would that
That
make to
part, though.
you? You know what I mean? And I remember literally the moment that someone explained what a homosexual was. It was when I was 9 years old. I was in the schoolyard during recess, and we had moved to Long Island at this point. So this was fourth grade. And on Long Island, for whatever reason, when they wanted to call you gay, they called you a mo, as in homo,
Mm.
right? So someone said, to me, you're a mo. And I was like, what is that? And they said, homo. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm still
Right.
clueless. Like, what
Yeah.
is that?
Again.
Right. And they said, homosexual, like when how you like girls? And I'm like, yeah. And he said, some boys like boys that way. And I was like, oh, okay. And that was it. That was my whole reaction. And it's never
Right.
changed. I'm 58 now, and that reaction is still how I feel about the subject. Like, I don't care who you want to stimulate your
Exactly.
genitals. I,
There's so many other
I don't
things.
I
Yeah,
don't care, and I don't care what depraved horrible things you do to each other, as long as you both agree that that's what you're
that
going to
part.
do. And don't do it to children, don't do it to animals. Otherwise,
Have at
you
it.
like people sitting on your chest? Okay, I don't get it. I'm not interested in
Right.
it, but it means
Mm-hmm.
nothing to me.
Yeah.
So I see that there's a lot of like focus on unimportant
Oh, too
things.
much.
Like in America, people people talk about the craziest things. People get outraged about the craziest things, and I think that's part of what feeds the
Yeah.
dysfunction. Like I'm a coach, and you're a coach. So when you're talking to people in the time that you've been coaching, what have you heard as consistent themes that are challenges for people?
Worrying about other people's opinions. That is the
Right.
probably the biggest one. We could literally be working on a strategy plan, a growth plan, and for some reason you have thrown somebody else's opinion and options into the equation, and I'll just stop and I'll be like, and now it's to the point like my regulars now when they do it, they catch my face and they like, wait, no, let's go back, let's rewind, because we're not talking about them. We are talking about you. And a lot of people are stuck because of that reason, because they want to be liked by society or for their peers, that really shouldn't even be their peers, but that might be a whole nother topic. But
Mm, right.
they want to be liked by people that really don't care or have any stake in their life. And a lot of people have allowed that to take over their lives because that's what social media makes them think is what is in.
Yeah. Yeah. That I can see that. And I think that for women that's even a more
Absolutely.
challenging thing. Men are oriented in a slightly different way. We're expected to be rugged
Hmm.
individualists and mavericks and all that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, everyone wants to be
Absolutely.
liked, and I agree with you 100%. That instinct, that impulse to be liked can easily go
Hmm.
astray. You know, um, I have tried my best to boil my life down to essential things. And in that effort, as you've described earlier, I've become
Yes.
happier because I've let go of the extraneous to whatever extent I possibly can. And one of the things I let go of is the desire to be liked by everyone.
Yes.
Okay. I was a very shy child. Nobody believes that now with the way I am now, but I was an extremely shy child. Even in my family, even at family gatherings, I was
Mm,
shy. So I was a painfully shy child. But now I've boiled it down to whose opinion do I really
that
care about?
part.
Right. And the answer to that is only the people that know me the best and care
The
about me the
most.
most.
Yes.
You know, like my best friend, we've been best friends for 21 years now, and we are each other's consiglieres, right? So, he comes to me with his stuff, I go to him with my stuff, and the only reason I care about his opinion is because I know he
Yes.
loves me. I know he wants what's best for me, and I know he'll be honest with me,
Absolutely. Yep.
right? Like if I've said this for decades now, if you're in my life and we're supposed to be friends, if you don't confront me on my bullshit,
You
you are
are
useless
that
to me.
part. And I think that's where people, kind of get it twisted because it's like, I'm not saying that we don't want support. When I speak on it, people are like, oh, well, you don't want nobody to support you. I do. But I don't just want any support. I want the genuine support. I want the real support. I want the positive reinforcement that is going to help me on those days where I might not be 100%, because that's one thing as well. I embrace that all days are not 100% days for myself, so but to
Right.
have that positive reinforcement from the people that I'm aligned with instead of people that I'm just defaulting to, there's a difference with that. And that, it helps. It helps a lot to
Yeah.
have that. So that's dope that you do have, someone like that in your corner.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I'm very fortunate. I have a handful of people that are my closest
Hmm.
friends. My second ex-wife is one of them. We've known each other, this July is 23
Mm.
years. The woman that introduced us, I've known her like 30 years. She's the only female friend that I have that I haven't had sex with.
Wow.
So I consider her I call her my unicorn, and we're always going to keep it
Yeah.
that way. But I have my best friend, and there are people in my life. All of the people in my life are loving, caring people, and they're
Yes.
positive people. You mentioned disengaging from social media earlier, and I can't stress this enough to people. You know, what you take in through your eyes, you take into your heart,
Yes. Oh my
you
God,
know,
yes.
and, I, years ago, probably about 10 or 12 years ago, I read this study, that said that people who consume more news, like if they're just constantly inundating themselves with news, two things became apparent from this study. The first one was they don't know anything more than anybody
Hmm.
else, right? They somehow have the impression that the more news they consume, the better informed they are, and they're not.
Not at all.
and and the second thing is that they're more stressed because they tend to think that the world is more dangerous than it actually
Hmm.
is. The fact of the matter is this: on any metric that you choose to look at, now is the greatest time to be alive in the history of the
Yeah.
world. If you look at war, violence, poverty, education, money, all that stuff, like all along crime, whatever you want to look at. Yeah, not to say that things are perfect, but historically, now, right this second, is the best time to be alive in world history. All right. So if you're sitting around all the time going, oh my God, the walls are coming down, what's going on at the border? Nothing is going on at the border. If you think that there's an immigration problem, you might as well think there's a unicorn problem. They are both equally as imaginary.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's
I
just
mean, it is.
facts. And by the way, there were two Republican think tanks that were trying to prove that there was an immigration problem and wound up proving that there wasn't one.
Boy, that bounce back was crazy.
Yeah, but I disengaged from
Oh yeah.
news a long time ago, and I can tell you beyond the shadow of a doubt that my life is much better for
Absolutely.
it. And it doesn't mean that I'm ignorant. I know what's going on, but I'm not
That
involved in it.
part.
I see headlines and I move on. I don't read the story anymore. And honestly, I wouldn't know what was going on if it wasn't for
Yeah.
Facebook, because that's really the only place that I see
Yeah.
headlines. And once in a blue moon, I'll see something about something that I might be interested in it. And I'll think, I don't know, is this clickbait? If it is, I
Hmm.
won't click it. If not, I'll check it out. But it's so rare that I actually read a news story. I don't care. I can't do anything
Right.
about it. And chances are it has no direct effect on my life
That's what
anyway.
people don't get. It is really
Yeah.
the clickbait. I started watching the news myself. I literally have TVs in my house that probably have not turned on in weeks. I will turn on maybe to catch something on the Fire Stick or the Fire TV or something like that. But I'm either reading, I'm either researching something, with regards to my coaching practice, or I'm just meditating. I'm just enjoying my time. I do not, I might watch the weather on my local news station for a hot second, but as soon as it goes to the regular news, I'm turning. You know, um, it's just
Yeah.
nothing that I'm interested in because I know that I have so many things for myself that that's where my focus is. Not, and like you said, not saying that we're not informed, but just saying I'm not sitting up there watching it for 20 minutes. 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there. You can see it in
Yeah.
30 seconds and know everything you need to know and keep it pushing.
Yeah. 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 Mark Twain once said that if you don't read the newspaper, you are uninformed. If you read the newspaper, you are misinformed.
Ooh. And facts on top of facts. They
Yeah.
tell you what they
Yeah.
want us
Yeah.
to hear.
And I study, I still study psychology. I've been studying, I don't know, since I was like
Hmm.
13 or something. And I love to read studies and all this. And I know too much about propaganda and behavior modification and all that stuff. And again, not to say that I'm immune
Yeah.
to it, but I'm not the average bear. Like I can see, and it doesn't matter which side we're talking about. There are no sides. There's only one side, and that's
Hmm.
corporations, and they want to convince you that you're not worthy. You have to do better, and their product is the thing
That
that's going to
part.
save you.
That's that part. As a coach, and who
You know,
offers, paid services and has products, available for sale. I definitely understand where it's like, okay, you got to throw that little marketing, you got to throw something a little catchy.
yeah,
The news media does is the same exact thing. And once I
right,
really got clarity on that, I'm like, okay, so now I just know, to make things do it how I want them done. Not how I feel it's gonna make,
right,
the sale, like I heard you say earlier as well, we're not for everybody. And I'm not trying to appeal to everybody. And once I understood that part of myself, it was smooth sailing for me. With that. I love being in the flow.
yeah. And as a coach, you have to provide value first. That's not how things normally
Yeah.
work, right? Value is usually something that's conjured up in your imagination. Like, a 30-second commercial is a one-way conversation, right? And in that 30 seconds, they can move you into uncertainty. Because here's a typical thing. Do you have restless leg syndrome? And someone on the other end goes, wait a second, I think I might. And then they go, well, this is what restless leg syndrome is, which, by the way, is not a
Right,
real thing.
right. I
Right?
got you.
There's actually a consulting company that comes up with ailments so that pharmaceutical companies
Mm.
can solve, right? So, they go, what is this your problem? We have the solution. Let me tell you why we're better than the competition, and here's where to go to buy this thing. That's in a 30-second commercial, and what they do is they hammer you with that over and over again. I almost never see a commercial now because like you, I watch things
Yeah.
through apps. So I'm never on broadcast television. And honestly, one of the worst experiences that I have is when I'm somewhere in public, like in a doctor's waiting room or something like that, and they have the news on
Oh
television.
yes.
I don't know why anyone has news on when you're waiting to involve yourself with them, because it just puts you in a crappy mood.
Absolutely. You would think you'd have some
you
type
know,
of listening music or some type of, yeah.
something pleasant, but you're sitting there, waiting to get your blood pressure checked, and by the time you get in there, it's spiking because of all the
That
horrible things you just listened to.
part.
Oh, there's a fire over here. There's a flood over here. There's an earthquake in a country 12,000 miles away. But, we're going to tell you about it anyway for reasons we can't explain. It's
Right.
it's just this
Oh,
constant
it is.
bombardment of horror. And again, people don't realize the millions and millions and millions of dollars that go into psychological research to make the communication that they're giving you
That
effective.
part. They think that the money is going
Yeah.
in to find cures, quote unquote, but unfortunately, it is the exact opposite. It is the exact
No.
opposite.
Yeah.
Why we are,
Chris Rock said the money's in the medicine, not in
that
the
part.
cure.
As advanced as we are as a nation, as a whole world, however, there are not cures for these things.
Well, first they break it and then they try to give you a cure for it. Like, you know, in America, there's all this thing about, oh, the sanctity of life. I'm like, really? Have you walked in a supermarket recently?
Apparently not.
you
You
know,
know.
we believe in protecting children. Really? Have you seen what they sell children in a
Yeah.
supermarket? It's all things to rot their teeth, make them fat, cloud their brain, jack up their ADD. Like, are you
While
kidding
you get
me?
new diagnoses to try to treat these illnesses that you're
Yeah,
allowing happen in the first place, So it's just like,
yeah,
that's myself included. Like, even as adults, there's so much things that they don't want us healthy. They don't want us to get healthy.
no,
In this stage of the game, why do we have to go to social media apps to find out things that could be for the better of us? We
yeah,
can't go to the
yeah,
news stream. They're never on there talking about, anything. Yeah, you might get a 2 second or a 30-second little clip here and there on a news channel, but why are we spending 20 minutes talking about the bad things, but a 30-second clip talking about the good things or the healthy things, in life for adults and kids? Um,
yeah,
you also made a great point earlier by saying that we're lazy. People are lazy and don't want to do the work. They're entitled and they feel like that is just supposed to come to them. So when it doesn't, then now you're defaulting to the negative and the laziness, and then you're like, well, nobody's telling me, you're not going to look for it. It's there. You have to just put in
yeah,
the effort,
yeah,
So
yeah. And it's interesting how the powers that be use language that disincentivizes people from seeking other ways of
mhm.
managing themselves. Like, for instance, an example that comes to mind quickly is kombucha, right? And kombucha would be under the category of alternative
Mhm.
medicine, right? And I'm like, well, wait a second. Kombucha's been around for 5,000 years. You're actually the alternative.
Don't want to hear that. Don't want to hear that. That's blackball status right there. That's blackball.
I mean, literally, like civilizations have been using kombucha I think it started in Russia
Yeah,
or something like that. Like, fermented products are among the healthiest things that humans
yeah,
can eat. Like if you look at countries that are into like things like kimchi or sauerkraut or or pickles
yeah,
even, because your overall health starts in your
yeah,
gut biome, and we know that the average person's intestinal flora has been depleted dramatically over the last 100 years. And as that has gone on, sickness has risen, and there's a direct correlation to these things. And then you look at countries that get better outcomes
yeah.
for health, and you go, oh, they eat a completely different way than
Completely. Oh my
Americans do.
God, completely different.
The standard American diet I call SAD, sad, right? Right?
I like
Uh,
that. I like
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I mean, again, I look at outcomes. I try not to get caught up in just
Yeah,
fanciful opinions, because there's two types of opinions, informed and
that part.
uninformed, right? And I don't care about uninformed opinions, because those are generally just the product of
Hmm.
imagination. And they're great for chatting, but if we're trying to solve problems, an uninformed opinion is not going to
At
help us,
all.
right? So when I look at other countries, and the fact that in some countries, colon cancer and stomach cancer basically don't exist, and in America they're at the top of the list for what kills people,
Yeah.
then you go, oh, well, maybe the American diet isn't ideal for human health. Maybe factory farming isn't the best way. And look, I have no idea what it takes to feed 350
Of
million
course. Of
people a
course.
day.
I got you.
Okay, it's a giant undertaking. I get that. However, China has 4 times the population that America does, and their health outcomes are much better. Okay, so again, I'm not saying China's a better
Hmm.
culture than America. They got their own weirdness going on over
Right
there.
now, yeah.
However, in specific things, it's like, and that's my approach to coaching too. I want to see who's getting the results that I find
Hmm.
productive, and then model those things, you know. And that's to me the simplest
Hmm.
approach. But you in order to do that, you have to be
That
humble,
part.
you know. And really, like the first step is when someone comes to me and says, "I need help," because that means that life has kicked them in the
Yes.
ass hard enough
Where
that they're
they're reaching
finally
out.
getting
Yes.
humble and trying to do something
Yep.
about it, you know?
And that's achievement though. That's an achievement though. That that's a good thing. And people, don't want to make it seem like it's a bad thing, especially as, we're in mental health awareness month now. It's very important to understand that that is a good thing to reach out.
Yeah, and in minority communities, there's this weird orientation to that. I understand some of that. The history that Black and Brown people have had with the American medical
Hmm.
industry has been
Yeah.
disastrous, and there's a lot of history that has gotten swept under the rug and just is never discussed anywhere. But it's there. Like the fact that you could easily, like in the 50s and 60s, you could easily institutionalize a Black man just by saying, "Oh, he seems
Yeah.
angry." So the angry Black man thing is a thing that was used to literally just remove people from
Yeah.
society. So there's a mistrust that built over time. So I get that. I get all of the historical things that weigh on minority communities. However, you can't keep looking in the
Thank you.
rearview mirror.
Thank you. You cannot.
You know,
You have to really be ready to move forward. I tell us all the time, like, I hear everybody always saying, "You don't know what I've been through. You don't know my struggles." You're right. I may not know them, but what I do know is that you are allowing them to dictate your life. You are allowing them to
right?
completely take over and run your life. And then, in the same breath that you're talking about, I don't know what you've been through, you say, "But I can't move forward. I don't understand why I'm stuck here." Let me tell you why you're stuck here, because you keep speaking your past into the existence of now.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
now is going to embrace you for the future. And if you keep speaking on the ills of the past, then that's exactly where you're going to stay, in the past. We've got to be ready
yeah,
to come
yeah,
move forward with resolutions and sacrifices, because it's going to take a lot of sacrifices, individually and as a whole, for us to really be able to start cracking those thick cement blocks that can be some of our minds.
right. Absolutely. There's a little device that I use to try to get people to see how useless it is to hold on to past belief systems, right? Um, the fact of the matter is this: we know that human beings go through a phase called the formative years, right? And it's considered basically up to age 7. That's your formative years. And people hear that word, but they don't think about what it
Hmm.
means. During that time, you are literally forming your understanding of life, right? And that's all well and good. However, some of the conclusions that a 7-year-old reaches might not be the most productive for someone in their
That
50s.
part.
Like the people come to me like, this seems to rear its head mostly in relationships. People have a lot of childhood
Yes,
stuff that they've held on to. And I get it. Again, while you're
of
growing
course.
up, if you're a man, you go through the Oedipal phase. If you're a woman, you go through the Electra phase. And that's where you fall in love with a parent, right? For men, they usually fall in love with their
Hmm.
mother. For women, they usually fall in love with their father. And that becomes the model of how they move forward through life and the mates that they choose and all that stuff. All well and good. However, maybe when you were that age, you were thinking things that aren't relevant to how old you
That
are now,
part.
and sometimes people come to me and I can literally hear the child talking when they're expressing what's going on and what they believe and what they're experiencing. And so I'll ask them, I'll say, let me ask you a question. Would you ask a 10-year-old for relationship advice? And they're like, no, of course not. And I'm like, right, but the stuff that you're talking about is the stuff you figured out when you were 10 years old. So you are consulting a 10-year-old for relationship advice.
That part, and they don't look at it that because you're applying the logic to the
Right.
situation, and a lot of people don't
Yeah.
do that. They are so wrapped up in the emotional decision making that when you bring the logic, it's foreign to them. They're like, "What do you mean?" I hear
Yeah.
that a lot. I'm sure you do too. Like, well, what do you mean? Because they're trying to process it logically, but sometimes some of us don't even have the tools to process things logically because we've been so used to using our emotions to do it. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a whole new mechanism for you to learn, So
Yeah. And I think people don't honor um, either their intellect or their
hmm
emotions enough. Like, there's this weird saying, think with your heart, not with you. No, think with your head, not with your heart. Right? Like if someone is like trying to decide what to do in a relationship, they get that kind of advice, and I'm like, no, you have it backwards. Like, here's the thing. I'm a strong believer in evolution, but it doesn't matter if anyone believes that God made them, because either way, the point is the same, right? So if it's evolution that designed you, or if it's a deity that designed you, here's the design. You have this intellect. We have these big brains that have been capable of doing more than any other creature on Earth, both bad and good. Okay. But we also have roughly 1,100 different emotions. So whatever designed us this way, with an intellect to solve problems and with emotions to guide us, right? So you have to figure out, and they're not at odds with each other. It's not intellect versus
right.
emotion. It's one informing the other. Like, I'll have a gut reaction to something. And even that saying, gut reaction, your guts actually have their own nervous system, right? And your brain has its own nervous system, and your heart has its
Yes.
own nervous system also, right? And so this is just the design. And again, it doesn't matter how you think the design happened. This is the
Yeah.
design. So why not use the design to get your way through life? Like, I'll have a gut reaction to something, and then, so that's the emotional part. I'll feel a feeling, and then I'll think to myself, okay, what am I feeling and why? And then after I figure that out, okay, what do I do next? Right? That's the
Yeah.
process. And it's not an easy process to discipline yourself to do, but it is a simple
Yeah.
process. Like, there's a question that I learned, God, back in 1988, when I started, because I started self-development in
Okay.
1987, and in 88, I got into a support group of a bunch of people that it wasn't like, like a
hmm
therapeutic thing. It was just individuals that got
Okay.
together to support each other in personal development. And the question that they taught me was, whenever I had a thought, right? Like, oh, I'm such a fucking idiot, right? That's a thought. The question is, what else is possible, right? Not, is there something else possible? Because that's a yes or no
Right.
question. And the fact is that there's always another way to look at
Always.
something, right? So, and it becomes a great pattern interrupt also. So if I have, because, our thoughts are generally what lead our
Right.
emotions, right? Like, if someone's depressed, I usually ask them, what were you thinking about for the last
hmm
5 minutes? That'll tell you what you're depressed about, right? And so if I have one of those things, oh, I'm so stupid or whatever, I'll stop and say, what else is possible? And usually the answer is simple is, oh, I'm human, I make
Yeah.
mistakes.
That's love. I like
Or
that.
it's no big deal. Like what happened? Nothing actually happened. You just had a weird
Yeah.
thought,
Yeah.
you know? And thoughts aren't things, no matter how much people want to convince you. I've thought about killing people. They're still walking
Exactly.
around.
I tell my clients all the time, like, this 85% of the things that you think about never happen, and I'm like, those
Oh yeah.
odds.
In my case, it's probably 99.9%.
At this point, me too. But it's like,
Yeah.
to adapt yourself to that mindset, it's okay. And even if it does, okay, what now? You know what I'm saying? What now? What are my empowering solutions to handle this? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's always going to be a solution. And I tell people, when you're dealing with grief and things like that, obviously there are different methods to different things, but when it comes to just overall being for you and only you, making you the priority, there are steps that you can take to make that happen for yourself. And applying, embrace your emotions, don't let them embrace you. I tell people all the time, don't let
Right.
yourself get overwhelmed with them. Don't let yourself, just be so riddled in it that you cannot get out of it. Because I process things a lot. I'm an overthinker. I'm a Gemini, so I overthink probably everything. And I used to do that in a negative light, but now, as you said, what now? I have now applied the positive logic to things to be able to do it on a positive note and be accomplished and be successful, in my follow through. So, and I had to recondition, how I thought about things, and that's something that a lot of us have to do, a lot of us.
Yes, yes, yes. And for me, the key takeaway to everything you just said is making yourself the priority.
Period. Woo!
Yeah.
Period.
This is something that people have given me some pushback on in the past because they want to categorize that as being selfish. And I'm like,
Yeah, I
no.
know.
I'm not a selfish person. I know who I am. I know what I am
Exactly.
and I know what I'm not. But here's what I do. I believe that if I don't make myself happy first, I cannot possibly contribute to anyone else's happiness.
My exact words. How do you want me to give to you? Or do you just want me to
Yeah.
just give you whatever? Give you the negative energy, give you the off vibes, give you that just for sake of giving something to you? Why would I want to do that to you? you know um I am priority, and I have heard the word selfish, and you know what I've said? If that's what you feel, then I guess that's what it is for you.
Yeah.
Because I'm not explaining setting my boundaries for myself. I'm not
Right.
explaining to you why I put my phone on do not disturb and I don't want to be bothered. I'm not explaining to you why I'm taking a mental health day for myself to make sure that I'm together. I'm not
Yeah.
explaining that to anybody. And I think a lot of us do that, and we're like, oh, you didn't answer your phone, you did it. And I didn't. Now it's to the
Right.
point since I began my journey, now my family and friends, they know if I don't answer, they know I'm going to get back to them.
Right.
They know the time limit if things aren't, if you haven't heard from me, but they know I'm on social media because I'll make a whole post when it comes to my business, and I still will not answer the phone. I set them
Yeah.
boundaries, for
Right. Right.
myself, and we sometimes try to make people feel bad because we're setting boundaries, and we're in a new
Yeah.
age, as you said. We're in the new age where we are following us and living for us, and I'm going to give you 100% because I'm living for me. So you're going to receive that energy to you. I'm pouring that into you. That's the energy that you want. You don't want that
Yeah.
toxic, frustrated energy that I used to give. You don't want that. It's not helping you.
Right. Right.
So I totally agree with that.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Yeah, and it's funny because the airlines have been teaching us this for the longest time.
Mm.
They every time they give the safety lecture, they say, make sure you put the air
Yeah.
mask over your face first before you try to help
Yes.
someone else.
It's crazy that you have to
I
say that
mean,
common sense, but yes.
whether it's Confucius or the airlines, we're all saying the same thing, right? You gotta
Yes,
help yourself first.
absolutely.
And anyone that knows me never thinks of me as selfish. The
Mm-hmm.
only time people even use the word is when I'm just telling them my philosophy on self-prioritization.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a selfish person. I'm
Mm-hmm.
actually a very generous person. I love people. I love to help people. And, you know, but like you, if I decide that I have to disconnect, and honestly, I don't really do that very often
Mm-hmm.
anymore, but there was a time where, and this is like pre cell phones and all that stuff, like people couldn't get me for
Right.
days. Because I just was like, all right, I'm woodshedding. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sitting here, like you mentioned, I'm meditating. I'm just doing me, trying to
Doing me.
figure out what's going on. And I also conditioned my friends to realize, okay, he'll be back
Yeah.
eventually.
Exactly.
If too long goes by, then do a wellness check. But other than
Right.
that,
Right. Yeah. You know my thing and
but
you know the moves
yeah,
now, so you know what to do.
yeah, yeah,
Fall
yeah,
back when
yeah,
you need to fall
absolutely.
back. It's all love.
Yeah. And it's funny. Once in a while, people are like, "Well, what happens if there's an emergency?" I'm like, "Down 911, man. I've
That part. Why am I the
you know,
emergency? I mean, I'm okay with the emergency contact, but okay. Let's make sure we're
right,
prioritizing the word emergency, okay?
right,
Let's make sure we do that,
right.
So, yeah, but it's just really
Absolutely,
important, that we continue to be mindful of ourselves and continue to make sure that we are okay. You can't be there for everybody. You can't do for everybody. Don't set yourself up for that road that's going to lead you to nowhere, nothing but negative frustration and havoc. It's just
right.
super important that we understand that, about ourselves, and it's okay because if we all start to fall in line with that, the world will be such a more peaceful place.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And there's a thing that I have employed for a long time. It's this phrase that comes from a short story, right? Herman Melville wrote Moby Dick, but he also wrote this short story called Bartleby the Scrivener.
Okay.
And Bartleby was he had some mental issues. However, he was a very gentle person. And when he didn't want to do something, he would not say no. He would say, I prefer not to, right?
Mm,
And it's a phrase that I encourage people to learn and use constantly.
that part.
Like this thing, again, I hear this and I hear this from men a lot. And I disagree with it wholeheartedly. This idea that sometimes you have to do things you don't want to do.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
No, I don't. I don't. I don't
there's
have to.
there's basically there's a real short list of things that I do that I don't want to do. I work and I don't want to work. I pay taxes, I don't want to pay taxes. I
Okay.
think that's the whole list. Right? Like if someone asks me to do something and I don't want to do it, I'm going to say I prefer not
I'm
to.
going to say I prefer not to.
And you know what? Anyone that has a problem with that, you really have to examine why you have a problem with
That part. Or examine why they're in your life in the first place. Because that's one
yeah,
thing that
and
I
I'm
had to
at the
do.
point where I don't have people in my life that are like that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and again, I'm really into saying yes to life. Every good thing that's ever happened to me was because I said yes.
Hmm.
And a lot of those things happened when I thought to say no, but I said yes anyway.
Right.
Right? So I'm big on saying yes to life. As a matter of fact, the whole lesson of the film Forrest Gump is what amazing things can happen to you if you just say yes.
Hmm.
Because even though people don't think about that when they watch that film, they think about life as a box of chocolates and all that stuff. But if you think about every amazing thing that Forrest experienced, he experienced it because when someone asked him to do something, he just said okay
Hmm.
without thinking about it. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer in that. And I mentioned my second ex-wife earlier. The reason I met her to begin with was that my best female friend said, I have someone I want you to meet. We met on a blind date. And I thought to say no when
Mm,
she brought it up, but I remembered because Forrest Gump had just happened 5 years previous and I
okay.
remembered Forrest Gump. So I said, okay, I'll do it. right? And now she's my second ex-wife,
Yeah.
but she's one of my best
Best
friends.
friend. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Janine. How you doing? Anyway, but all that notwithstanding, learn to say I prefer not
Yeah.
to if it's something you don't want to do.
Yeah. It is.
Because if you say yes, don't blame anyone else if you're unhappy with the outcome of that decision.
That part. You cannot take
because
accountability.
no one made you do it.
That part. Talk about it, Chuck. We talk about it. Like, that's the whole thing. Be okay if you did it, and don't try to deflect the accountability on anyone else but you. You know, and it's okay to take a second before you answer. I think a lot of times we want to just jump into the answer and hurry up and give a response, but it's okay to say, let me think about that for a second. It's okay
Yeah,
whether it's a 5 second think or it's a 30-minute think. It's okay to take that time to
right.
think about it. Don't feel
Yeah,
pressure
yeah,
to have to answer it as something right then and there. I really don't care what it is. It could be, hey, you could get $1 million right now if you just do this. And just because you put $1 million out there, that doesn't mean I'm just going to hurry up and say, oh, yes, 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 yes. No, I'm going to
right.
take whatever time I need to take. And if that opportunity passes me by because of that, then I'm okay with that. I've become okay with, know, being okay with if something wasn't for me at that time. Because one thing I know, I will align myself for things for me to come back around if they are for me. So
Yeah, and sometimes it's just one big breath that you got to take. Someone asks you a question. If you have any conflict whatsoever, any hesitation, anything, just take one
that's
big
it.
breath, let it out, and follow what your gut is telling you. The more I align myself with my gut reaction, the happier I
Period.
am. Without exception.
Period.
It's like, I just ended a relationship recently, and it was a difficult decision
Mm,
for me because it was something I was very hopeful
okay.
about. But I listened to my gut and I said, yeah, you know what? Despite whatever fantasy I had about what this could
Yeah.
be, it turns out that it's not what I thought, and it has nothing to do with something being wrong with
Right.
her. She's a wonderful person. It just, I realized it wasn't right for me. And in the past, that was a difficult
Yeah.
decision for me. Now, even though I didn't like having to make that decision, it wasn't
Hmm.
hard because I
Yeah.
trust my gut. So uh, I trusted my gut and reached out to you, and it worked
It
out
did.
beautifully. Thank you so much for
It's been a
joining me.
pleasure. I love these.
I really appreciate your perspective. Please tell everyone how they can find you.
I am pretty much on all social media platforms under Coach KAYWDS. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I'm also available on LinkedIn under Keisha Woods, which is Kisha Woods. I have my Empowering Real Talk podcast, which I actually am. New season will be coming up in June, but I also have my Empowering Real Talk live streams that you can find on my LinkedIn and Facebooks every Monday and Thursday, where we're just having real life conversations to help us grow and help us be better individuals and as a whole society. So you can definitely catch me over there. I love to follow back. I just love interacting and just love being inspirational for others. So it's been such a pleasure to be here. I definitely am grateful.
All right, excellent. And everybody, thanks for watching and listening.
Bye
Peace, love,
guys.
and granola. We'll talk to you soon.